Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be learning about the methods of the string class in Java. Now, if you remember the last few videos, you know that strings are basically non-primitive data types. They work a lot like classes and objects. Whenever you're making a string, you're basically making an object of the string class. Now, since string is a class, it also has multiple methods that you can use with string objects. These methods make it a lot more easier to use strings in programming, and they're really important to understand. Now, there are multiple methods that you need to know, but in this video, we're only going to be talking about these few methods. In a different video, I'm going to be talking about the remaining important methods. And the first method we're going to be talking about is the length method. Now, here you can notice that I made this array called A, which has these 5 elements 3, 5, 6, 7, and 9. And whenever I wanted to find the number of elements, I would just say a dot length. This would return the length of this array or the number of elements in this array. Here the length of the array is 5. So when I run this program, you see that I do indeed get 5. It has returned the length of the array. So when I say length of a string, we're really talking about the same thing. Finding the length of the string is just finding the number of characters in that string. To understand this, we're going to make a string called obj and we're going to give it the word hello world. Now, you might not have realized this before, but whenever you use length for arrays, you're basically accessing a variable of the array class. That's why after length, you never used any brackets. It was not a method, it was a variable. However, for strings, it's not a variable, but it's a method. Since our string is still a class, the object also functions as any other object. Whenever you're calling a method using an object, you would just first write the object name, in this case obj, you would use the dot operator, and then you would write the method name. In this case, the method name is length. And we're just going to use these brackets to show or to tell the program that yes, I'm using this method called length of the string class. In this case, this length method, or in other words, this obj.length statement should return the length of the string. If you count the length of the string, you notice that I have 11 characters. Remember, even the space is considered as a character. Let's just print this obj.length and see if it outputs 11 or not. So here you notice that I added a println statement, which is basically printing obj.length. Remember, length functions like any other method. In this case, it just returns the length of the string. When I run this, I get 11. So you notice that this length method can be used for any string to find the length of that string. Now, something that's important for you to know is that whenever you're printing the length of a string, you don't always have to make a variable or an object to store that string and then call the methods using that object. You can directly call the method using that string itself. To show this, we're just going to use a random string and a println statement. Let's just say our string is Java and we're just going to say java.length. All this is going to do is it's going to count the number of characters in this string and it's going to return the number of characters. The only difference is that I'm not storing this in an object earlier. I'm directly using the string over here. When I run this, I should get 4. And you notice that that is indeed what we get. We get 4. Now, the length method seems quite simple, but if you remember anything from arrays, you'll know that finding the length of something like a string or an array is extremely important. Over the next few videos, you'll find out why the length method is so important. Now, we're going to look at the charAt method. Now, to understand the charAt method, we're going to take this string called subscribe. Remember, the strings behave like arrays, meaning that every element or every character of the string has an index. So over here, every single one of these characters has an index or a position value. The charAt method basically helps you to access one of the characters using their index positions. And the syntax is going to look something like this. You would first have the string, and then you're going to write .charAt to call the charAt method using this string object. And in the bracket, you're going to have a parameter which is just going to be the index. In other words, this method is just going to access whatever character is located in this particular index and return this character. So if I say subscribe.charAt3, this is just going to return the character at the index number 3. So it's going to return the character S. To show this, I added a println statement, which is just printing the character at the 3rd index number. If I run this, you notice that I do get S. This shows that the charAt method works really well. Now, something important that you need to realize is that the value that the charAt method is returning is of the char data type. It's not returning a string, but it's returning a character. This means that if you want to store this character, I would have to store this in a char variable. So let's say I'm using the charAt method to find the character at index number 5. If I want to store this character so that I can use it later on in a program, I'll have to store this in a char variable. So I can just say char a is equal to whatever character it stores. Over here, since the character at index number 5 is r, this variable a is going to be storing the character r. And when I print the variable a, this should print the character r. So you notice I'm printing the variable a. When I run this, it prints r. This shows that the charAt method does return a character value. And this becomes important, especially when you're trying to store this character in variables or you're trying to use them later on in your program. Now we're going to look at the indexOf method. Before we look at the indexOf method and the syntax for the method in an actual program, let's try to understand what this method actually does. To do that, we're going to take this string called hello there and we're going to call it string word. You notice that I also added the index numbers for each of the characters of these strings. Now the indexOf method just returns the index of the first occurrence of a smaller string in a larger string. So over here, let's say I say string word dot index of the word he. Basically, our indexOf method is going to be returning the starting index of this smaller string he in this larger string hello there. The first occurrence of the string. That's very important. So over here, if I say string word dot index of he, you notice that the first occurrence of the word he is over here. The starting index of this word he is 0. So string word dot index of he is just going to be returning 0. You notice that our string he is present later in this larger string as well, in the word there. But it doesn't return the index of that string because it's always the first occurrence of the string that's important. Now in my code editor over here, I added a printf statement that's just printing hello there dot index of he. Over here, the first occurrence of he is over here. As we've seen before, this should return 0 and this should print 0 as well. So when I run this program, you notice that we do indeed get 0. And this makes sense. The starting index of this word he in this larger string is 0. But what if the string that you're searching for is not actually in the larger string? Let's say I'm searching for the string eh. If you notice, the string eh doesn't really exist in the string hello there. When this is the case, Java just returns -1. The index -1 does not exist. Therefore, Java is just trying to show that this string does not exist in this larger string. When I run this program, you notice that I do get -1 to show that this string eh has not been found. It's not a part of this larger string. Next, we're going to be looking at the lastIndexOf method. To understand the lastIndexOf method, we're going to take our original string hello there and we're going to call this string obj. The lastIndexOf method is quite similar to the indexOf method. All it's doing is that it's returning the starting index of the last occurrence of a smaller string in a larger string. So over here, if I say string obj.lastIndexOf he, you notice that the last occurrence of he is over here, where the starting index of this occurrence is 7. The first occurrence is at the beginning, but remember we're doing a lastIndexOf. This is going to be returning the starting index of the last occurrence of the string. Now since the starting index is 7, this method is just going to return the value 7. Next, we're going to look at the toUpperCase method. Now the toUpperCase method is just going to convert any string to the uppercase form of the string and then return this new string. To understand this, we're going to create a string object called string obj word and we're going to set this to this string hello everyone. And then, like any other string method that we've seen, we're just going to say obj word dot toUpperCase and see what happens. Remember, the toUpperCase method is just going to convert this string to the uppercase form of the string and then return that new string. When I run this program, you see that this returns the uppercase form of hello everyone. Something important you need to understand is that this method is going to be returning a string as well. So if I want to store the method in a variable, I will have to create another string object and then store it in this new string object. So in other words, I can make a string object string obj2 and I can set this equal to obj word dot toUpperCase. This is just going to convert the string obj word to the uppercase form of the string and then store it in this variable or this object obj2. Now, even if I take a string where some characters are in lowercase while the other characters are in the uppercase, it's going to convert the whole string to uppercase and it's going to return this new string. So if I print obj2, you notice that it's going to return hello everyone, where every single character is in uppercase. Also keep in mind that instead of making a different object and using this object to call one of the string methods, I can use the string itself. So over here, instead of saying obj word, I can directly type whatever string I'm using. So in this case, I'm using hello everyone. I can type the string over here, and this is just going to convert this string hello everyone to uppercase and store it in this object obj2. Now we're going to be looking at the toLowerCase method. The toLowerCase method is just the opposite of the toUpperCase method. In this case, it's just going to convert our string to the lowercase form of the string and then return this new string. So over here, you notice that I have the string called obj word, which is set to hello everyone, where some of the characters are in lowercase while other characters are in uppercase. If I make another string called string obj2 and I set it equal to this string obj word dot to lowercase, it's just going to convert the string to the lowercase form of the string and store it in this obj2. Now we're just going to print this obj2 and then we're going to run our program. When you run a program, we notice that we get the lowercase form of the string, so our method works really well. Now, something important that you need to understand with both the toLowerCase and toUpperCase methods is that both of these methods, they don't change the original string. They only return the converted form of the string. So over here, if I print obj word, you notice that it still prints the original string where some of the characters are in uppercase while other characters are in lowercase. Even though I used the toLowerCase method, it doesn't change the original string. It's important that you understand that the toLowerCase and the toUpperCase methods only return the converted form of the string. They don't change the original string. Now we're going to be looking at the equals method. The equals method is pretty simple. You're just going to use it to find if two strings are equal to each other or not. Now remember that with primitive data types, we use the equals to operator. And we can actually use the same operator with two strings as well. But it doesn't work the way you would expect it to. To understand this, we're going to take two strings, str2 and str1. I've represented how the two strings are stored in memory. Both the strings store pointers which point towards these separate strings computers. When I check if str1 is equal to str2, it's going to return false. Because for strings, the equals to operator is only going to check if the two strings point towards the same string or not. In this case, even though the strings are equal, since it's just pointing towards two separate strings, it's going to return false. Now, if I have another case where both str2 and str1 are pointing towards the same string computers, and I check if str1 is equal to str2, it's going to return true. So even though it works well in some cases, in most cases it won't. And this is a huge disadvantage. Now we can actually see that in a real program as well. Over here, I made a string called A, which stores this separate string object called computers, and I made another string called B, which is going to be storing a different object with the string computers as well. We know that both the strings are equal. A equals B should be true. But remember that A equals B is only checking if both these strings A and B are pointing towards the same string or not. In this case, they are clearly separate objects. I made them so that they are pointing towards these different strings computers. So check should store false. When I print check, you notice that I do get false. Even though the values of both strings are equal, just because they store different pointers, it's going to print false. The syntax for the equals method is actually pretty simple. You're going to have your first string, string1, and you're going to say dot equals, and you're going to add the brackets. In the brackets, you're going to add your second string that you're comparing the first string to. If they're equal, it's going to return true, and if it's not equal, it's going to return false. It's important to remember that the return data type for the equals method is a boolean. This becomes important if you want to store the output of the equals method in a variable. So here I created two strings A and B. A is storing the string computers and B is storing the string computers as well. Both the strings are equal. So now we're going to use the equals method and we're going to see if it actually returns true or false. So here I'm just printing A dot equals B. Over here, we know that both the strings are equal, so this should return true, and the printf statement has to print that true. When I run this, you notice that we do get true. Now, if you want to store the output of our original statement in a variable, you can do so by creating a variable of the Boolean data type. Because remember that the equals method is returning a value of the Boolean data type. It's returning either true or false. So we're just going to make a Boolean check, and we're going to set this to a dot equals b. If they're equal, it's going to store true. If they're not equal, it's going to store false. Now that's only some of the important string methods that you need to know. In the next video, we're going to be learning about the other important string methods. Thank you for watching and have a great day.